Hello and welcome to the ONTIC Connected Intelligence Podcast. I'm Chuck Randolph, ONTIC's Chief Security Officer. Join us as we delve into valuable insights and practical advice that will empower you to navigate the complexities of modern corporate security and risk. We're here to share knowledge from experienced leaders and innovators in the field. All right, get settled and let's dive in. George Randle is the managing partner at Randle Partners and a seasoned talent executive coach and leader with over 20 years experience in Fortune 100 and Fortune 1000 HR and talent acquisition. A former U.S. Army officer, he has built and led teams that have hired over 80,000 professionals across 60 countries. He is the co-author of the best-selling book, The Talent War, and is an expert in leadership assessment, helping private equity firms evaluate and optimize portfolio company executives. George Randle, welcome to the Connected Intelligence Podcast, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is. I've been waiting for this one because we're in the security space, and I think given a lot of things going on in the world, and you see a lot of folks entering in the space, I think this is a very apropos question for now, or a very apropos conversation about talent acquisition, and what drives people. So appreciate your time here, my friend.
Hey, no problem.
Let's get right into it, because I know, given the amount of time, I've got a lot of questions, and I can imagine the pivots that we'll go to on this. You were a U.S. Army officer, and of course, from that, you then come over to, let's call it the talent acquisition side within the corporate world. I mean, I'd like to wind it back to former NCO, then officer George Randle, and now someone who helps acquire executives and leaders into big firms. How's your philosophy changed from that young Army NCO, young Army officer into now? I mean, how's those philosophies evolved?
Well, what's interesting is the rationale starts with poverty. I didn't join the Army to be a patriot, although my dad was an Air Force vet, but I joined to pay my way through school, got the leadership bug, and then that's when I did the officer thing. But, you get to a certain point and you don't get to get your boots muddy. You don't get to be putting rounds down range anymore. So
Right.
I knew I was going to be a PowerPoint ranger, back then a Harvard graphics ranger. That really dates me. But I stepped out, and a light bulb went off that really what I was enjoying in the military was building high performing teams. And so talent acquisition and HR and talent management, when the light bulb went off, it's like, hey, I'm good at this. I understand what talent looks like. Or at the time I had the belief that I did. It's since grown over 20 years, of course. But, I knew that, look, you get this team in the military and you've got to make the best of it. I mean, you don't get to select, but now I get to help business leaders select talent to make high performing teams. And that just drove me into psychology, leadership assessments, all of those things. And I was like, listen, you and I both know very well, brother, individuals don't win, teams do. And so you got to put good teams together for whatever industry, whatever business, and get that right chemistry and the right leadership in place to drive it forward.
Let me ask you something. I mean, I understand. I also went into the military mostly to pay for school. But I think somewhere in all of us, there's a drive for service. So I appreciate the pun. Like I went in through poverty to pay for school, but I got to imagine, knowing you, that there was some innate spark that said, look, part of the drive to do this is a dedication to service. I mean, that clearly comes through in your voice. I mean, do you remember that clearly at the time, being part of that decision?
I do. And it was once I got around, I think it was all of a sudden you get into the middle of this group of people and you see there's a bigger purpose, and there's a shared purpose, and there's a shared vision. And, that is to certainly protect and serve our country, but you're doing it with fellow patriots, fellow Americans, and you're doing something with purpose and with meaning, and you want to be the best at it. And so, as much as it was a necessity, then it became, oh, this is a passion. I really did not want to leave the military. I just reached a point where family obligations and things, where we all come into difficult choices. but I loved it and still to this day look back and can name people I've served with 30 years ago. It just changed my life. It was the greatest leadership incubator in the world. That's what I call it. And it just drove my passion forever. And it still sticks with me.
But it's important. I think the lesson from that moving forward is like, look, when you're, how do you think about that when you're recruiting now for talent at a higher level? Like, look, we need somebody that understands how the sausage is made, understands how they need to make it rain, and they're just not stuck up here at a high, at the stratosphere, making pontifications about tenants and other things, because actuality is we still need to produce.
Well, I think there are three things that kind of break it down. Number one, when I'm hiring, whether it's an executive or a senior leader now, first of all, there are the table stakes. Those are the skills that you have to have them. If I provide a bunch of resumes to a firm, they're going to be 5 degrees off center. Everybody's going to have generally the same table stakes. Second thing is I'm looking at the attributes. What are the characteristics that separate people? And then one of the last things is I'm really looking out for whether they have good ego, bad ego, or balanced ego. Because that's where you and I've run into those senior leaders, senior officers, senior NCOs, where it's now the position, the rank, but to their head, and it's ego, and they're pontificating versus the good ego, where I've got somebody that's like, I'm in charge. It's my responsibility. It's not about me, but it's all on me. And I got to find a way to make every iteration better and better and better and better. I've got to train harder, improve the skills, but I've also got to improve the decision making, discernment, and the drive for everybody that I lead.
I think you're absolutely right. Back here on my, for those listening in, on my shelf, I have a copy of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I read it all the time. He speaks so highly in that of understanding that balance of your ego. So I can't agree with you more. And I love the fact you said it, attributes. And in the book, The Talent War, you kind of emphasize the importance of some attributes over technical skills. And I know some people are listening going, wait a minute, I'm technically competent, therefore I should be where I am. Walk us through the attributes and why you find, what are most critical in building those resilient teams, especially in this case, security teams.
So, the quick way to define and where I tell people the dividing line is skills can be taught, attributes have to be developed. And everybody has a set of attributes, but they have them at different and varying degrees and amounts. And so, I'm not going to hire a recent Wharton MBA grad to be a CEO of a company. The skills just aren't there. The experiences aren't there. But what I am looking for, if the table stakes are fine, I'm looking for the attributes. So in the security world, one of the things that I'm looking for, number one, is the humility. That's probably first and foremost. People that operate under the best idea wins, because you can't have one person that says, hey, this is our plan of attack, this is our courses of action, this is what you're doing, this is what you're doing. They should have the humility to go, okay, I want everybody to look at it. Is this the way we take the hill? Is this the way that we prepare this project? Somebody poke holes in this. Tell me where the landmines are. Tell me where we're going to go wrong, or tell me where we can take it up a notch. I want a leader that has the humility. Second of all, I want curiosity. I look for effective intelligence. And the way we define that in the book was, I like to give a description of people that we work with. There's always that person that may not have had a college degree. They're just a go-to person. If you're stuck and you don't know how to do something in your company, you call them up and they're going, yeah, I got it, I got it, I got it. And they magically make it happen. And those are the people that, where no book solution existed in the past, they have the ability to take all these disparate data points and points of view, ideas, and put them together into a way forward. So I'm looking for effective intelligence, absolutely humility. They have to have that. In the security space, curiosity, because I want them thinking and wondering. Like, I don't want to hire a head of sales with curiosity. I don't need that in the security space, but I also want drive. And then I'm also looking for ownership. Are they willing to own everything in their role to drive a solution forward? Absolutely. Meaning, and you and I both know it. There are so many people we've hired that's like, well, what happened to this project? Oh, I sent Joe and Jill an email. And what
Yes.
happened? You didn't own it past that. You didn't own it past the solution. So those are the things in the security world that I look for. because there are a lot of people, and way over my head. I married one. I'm punching way above my weight. She's a double engineer, and she has this technical smarts that's absolutely unbelievable. But she has that humility and curiosity to ask herself, do I have the best way forward? Do I have the solution that takes care of our clients and accomplishes the mission? And she can ask herself that versus saying, no, this is what we're going to go do.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Especially, I mean, you really talked about critical thinking, which I think is so important. Active listening. I love the idea of curiosity and humility, and then ownership. And I'm wondering, just as a side question to that, um, and I love the idea like skills are taught, attributes are developed. So if I'm a young manager listening in right now, and I'm like, hey, I've got young Jane or young Joe, and they're on my team, and ownership seems to be something that I'm having problems with. What's your recommendations for that person to kind of like, again, thinking like, how do you develop ownership?
Yeah. So as an executive coach, I just actually had this conversation yesterday, and I try to keep it simple. That's our background, simple, not easy, but simple. The difference between accountability and ownership that was put to me, I thought the best definition was Rich Deveni, who wrote The Attributes, just superb leader. Accountability is extrinsic. Ownership is intrinsic. What I'm trying to develop in my teams and explain, if that young manager is talking to somebody, say, listen, it's very easy for me to come and check your work and hold you accountable, but that's making me do a lot of your work. What I want you to do is own it to the best of your ability and take it to the limit. Everything that has your name on it, you own. You are empowered to make decisions. You have some, what we call bumper guards, guardrails. Don't go outside those things. But I want you to go as far as you possibly can with every solution, every project, and come to me. But I am giving you ownership to do the right things here and develop. And it's really another word for empowerment, is what a lot of people would hear today with the current generations of folks. But when people understand their names attached to it, you generally get a better product versus somebody doing, well, I better do this because my boss is going to come check and hold me accountable for doing it.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, in the military, for the longest time, and it still somewhat exists, that idea of mission command. Here's your right and left limits. Here's your
Yes.
objective. You do what you need to do within that. And I think that I like that. I think that's a good way to do it. Like everything within this limit you own, kid, it's yours, or
Yeah.
person X. Like your name is now attached to this. And there's some things to that too, like executive presence, active listening, other things that come with that aren't going to be like here. I worry sometimes that we get into this checklist idea, and I do love the book, The Checklist Manifesto, but I think there's some problems with here's my daily checklist. I did it all. I should be good now. As opposed to, I like what you're saying is like, here's the objectives. Here's everything you have within this. You go do it. You own this. The successes are yours, and the gaps are yours too. But I'll be here to help you cover those
Yeah.
gaps.
I'm going to invest you. And the thing that it does is the only, we get at the back of the book, the only thing you can truly leave as a leader is a legacy of leadership. You'll move on, they'll fill your position, but people will remember you. But by giving somebody ownership, what you're saying is, look, I trust your intelligence, I trust your drive, I trust you to deliver this. But at any time you're stuck, I'm here. And, we all know there are some stupid questions, but I tell people that, listen, I want you to have credit for this. I want you to take ownership. And the other thing is too, is that by taking ownership, it's freeing up other members of the team. And people understand you're now working as a team. This is my portion. I've been entrusted with it. Now I've got to look to my left and right. Who do I have to coordinate with to make my project that my boss has given me ownership of as best I possibly can? So it's really building trust within the people that you work
And that's great too, because you think about like the idea of like across and within organizations. You and I have both been in the military. Many people listening to the podcast have been in harm's way. where you have to trust the individuals on your right and left implicitly. I need you to get your side, you get your side, and I'm going to fully focus on my sector, because if we don't, bad things could happen. Sometimes maybe that's a culture that, that's a, let's call that a foxhole culture,
Yeah.
where you intrinsically have to trust your right and left. Here we go. Now we're talking about cultures in corporate America where the stakes may not be at that level, but we still need to develop a culture that attracts people that understand those types of mentality. I mean, how can companies create that type and set that type of culture to say, hey, look, we believe in the mission, we believe in you, and we want you to believe in each other wholeheartedly?
Well, one part of the book that we talked about, we found some of the top things that what new hires wanted, and one of those things was autonomy. And if I can digress just a minute, and I'll answer your question. The other thing that you and I know well from being in the military as leaders, we can't be every place at
Yeah,
every
no.
moment that we're needed. So
Yeah.
if you don't develop ownership and you're working remote, you're in another state, you're doing a board presentation, you're somewhere else, and that person has ownership and they can't reach you, they're going to make decisions that they know are in keeping with your intent. And you can't be everywhere. So teaching managers to develop ownership, it allows you the freedom of movement. And that is really, really huge. But I like to try to find people, and I'm asking them when I interview them a series of questions. Actually, I interview without resumes, I interview without looking at LinkedIn, and I'm asking behavioral questions to see how well they know themselves. And I ask them, what kind of environment do you want to work in? Where do you do your best work? And I want to look for those things where there's autonomy, where, look, I'm not afraid to ask a question, but I like to work and drive things forward and then reach out to people, because, oh, I'm a workaholic, I work hard. Those are all such patent answers we hear too much. But I'm looking for those things where somebody is like, hey, you give me something, I'm off to the races. There's the person I need to dig into.
Hey, we'll get back to the conversation in just a moment. But first, in the world of safety, security, and protection, we know that gathering and sharing information is crucial. That's why we created the Ontic Resource Center as a hub for security strategies, best practices, and tools and tips to do your job more efficiently. Take a look at the articles, checklists, guides, industry frameworks, and more. Check out the link in the episode description to visit Ontic Resources, or go to ontic.co/resources. What's interesting, like earlier when you said, like, look, I don't know, but I'll find out. I'm a solutions person. I'm curious. I think you said something else there that's important too. I think over the last 4 weeks, I've used that leadership mantra that we both were told in infantry officer basic course, which is a leader's job is to be where they can best control the battle. Now,
Yes.
let's break that down to the corporate side. That means, like you just said, you can't be everywhere. Stop trying to pretend, but fully understand the objectives of your organization and understand, where do I need to be to push the line? Is it in the front helping the manufacturers do something? Is it somewhere strategic? Is it somewhere in between? Where do I need to be best today to help move that mission forward, and empower those folks underneath me to say, hey, look, when I'm not here, you are it. If
Yeah.
I'm here, I'm only helping you. I'm not taking over for you. Because I feel sometimes leaders have that issue, or like, I'm going to show up, George. I'm in charge. I'll take care of all this. When in fact, maybe what you need to do is just say, I'm here to help you. I'm here to augment what my subordinate is doing.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting that I found in my career, where the ownership and developing that. And let me say, you've seen flat organizations, you've seen hierarchical organization, you've seen servant leadership, but it's really a blob. Where does that leader need to be, to your point, to best support the mission? And so if I've given it to somebody, I've reached SVP level, I have led 600 people across the globe. I cannot be in all those countries at one time. My intent can be there, the ownership is there, but what's really, really interesting about that is when these people take ownership of a project, then they may need me to be their backup. Hey, let's check in once a week. Tell me where you're going, what you're doing, what are your obstacles. Where are you not getting coordination? Where are you not getting support? What obstacles can I break down for you as a leader so you accomplish what we talked about? And so that puts me, I'm trusting you, but I'm your resource. If it goes wrong, landing on my shoulders, don't worry about it coming
Yes.
back to you. I got your air cover, I got your six, but make no mistake, you're out front and I'm your resource as a leader. And many times, the higher you go, technology changes so fast. A lot of those people on the ground know a hell of a lot more than I do.
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
what
it goes back to your humility.
yeah,
Know what I don't know, and accept that. Look,
exactly.
I'm here to do something, but I have people in the field that can walk me through the particulars, and be
Exactly.
curious about that.
And if you're a leader that walks in and looks at some 27, 28-year old, front end developer, whatever, pick your coder, pick your position. And you say, look, I'm here to remove these obstacles. Tell me what they are for you to do your best work. I want you to be successful. If this team is successful. And then the other thing that I've shared with my teams as part of that kind of ownership and humility is I'll take talent acquisition. Nobody says George the recruiter is broken. They say recruiting is broken. So as part of ownership, I tell everybody, nobody says engineering or product development is, Joe or Jill or Gina is broken. They say product development is broken. I said, so each one of you carry the entirety of our reputation across the company. That's why ownership means everything, because it's not just your reputation. You're protecting and developing and enhancing the reputation of our entire team.
Yeah, that's interesting. It goes back to the culture thing too. The idea of like, how now do we culminate that culture of ownership across the whole? We were talking about Jocko Willink before we turn the mics on, and thinking about extreme ownership. Like, how do we cultivate that across an organization that says, hey, look, and I love what you say, by the way, where you're like, look, subordinate, this is yours. The success is 100% going to be yours. It's hard for some people, maybe when you're a leader, to realize like the success is theirs. But if something goes wrong, it's your job to shoulder that,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
I think for some people is hard to realize. Like, look, if things go south, I'm going to own that as the boss.
Yeah.
Now, you and I
Nothing.
might have a conversation after, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna own that. We might have one of those, what do we call in the military, like walk with me. But in the moment, I'm gonna own that piece. But if it's a success, you're gonna 100% say that's great. Let's pass it over to Jill because this is her project, and she made a win.
Yeah, exactly. And my last company, the cybersecurity firm that I was at, I made it a point to see how many people I could push out in front of the executives that they supported.
Mm, I love that,
I
and
I get
good on you,
all
man.
I get all the attention I could possibly want. I get more attention than I need in a day to get my stuff done. And if I can start pushing my subordinate leaders out, I told you at the beginning of the show. So I'm married to a chief customer success officer. She's an engineer at the company she works with. When I helped her develop some of this, instead of the head of talent acquisition, I had the senior manager was a student of her business. And that was the one that they were supported. You don't need all the C suite people diving in on one person. What you want is every leader to have that person that has ownership, will take it, run, and go with it. So I would always push my people out front. Scared them to death a lot of times, but it prepared them for what I see and what I do.
And those are things you can't learn in school. Those are, like you said, those are attributes, and they must be developed. Let me ask you a quick side question. By the way, as everyone knows listening, we're totally off the script that we wrote, because that's just the way that Connected Intelligent podcast goes. But you struck on something a minute ago, George, that I think is maybe important. I'd love for you to put your executive coach, executive leader hat on. I've moved up in the ranks. I started out running something in our GSOC, Global Security Operations Center. Now I'm a manager and I'm a leader. And you're telling me that I need to give credit to somebody else. You're telling me that I'm not always going to be the operational person seen as the doer, maybe seen as the thinker. George, That is freaking uncomfortable for me because my entire life has been spent on doing, pressing buttons, making things happen. Now, inherently, when I look in the mirror in the morning, I might think, oh man, I'm not contributing because I'm thinking, I'm doing strategy, I'm trying to be where, like George and Chuck are saying, where I can best control the battle. What kind of advice do you give to people like that to say, hey, look, you've leveled up, your thinking needs to level up, you need to level up? What is your advice for people?
Well, my short, smart ass answer is as much every time that I've done that and pushed all these people forward to, and I would push people in front of briefings of CEOs, and I would coach them and prepare them and rehearse them. And they would do pretty well, but I needed them to gain that experience. And so there are a lot of leaders that don't do it because they're afraid. They're like, I need to be in front of that CEO. Here's what I tell everybody. I've never worked for I've worked for some executives who weren't the best, but every one of them knew that it all came off of my team. They're already looking at me going, well, why is George the only one pushing the senior managers forward to brief me? Now they start looking at the other people going, well, where are your directs and what are they doing?
I
And
think
so
there's,
he
but
brought this.
but brother, it's scary. Wait a minute, we're briefing the CEO. I should be the one doing that. When I think you're absolutely correct, though, like
They
they
do.
know.
You and I both knew it leaders. It's like, okay, you got a good platoon leader, you got a good platoon sergeant, but something goes really, really right. You know which squad leader did that right, you know? And you're praising, hey, you know what? The praise that comes down is the best praise you can get from the CEO. George, you've developed a great team. And then the other thing that it does, honestly, and this is very, very selfish, when I finish developing most of these teams and I get them where I want, I can go on vacation and turn my cell phone off. I got 4 or 5 people
Wait,
that
wait,
can
wait,
pick
wait.
stuff
Will
up.
you say that one more time, just for
Yeah,
people listening, especially in security? You turn your cell phone off and unwind.
on the island of Holbox. It's an island north on the North Peninsula, flying to Cancun, 2 hours up on a plane, fly to Holbox. I'm drinking something that's got mezcal, tequila in it, and I'm not worried. And then there's a simple code I used to give my managers on. Honestly, my cell phone's off. It never rang, but I would have text 411, call me because I have a question that needs your input,
Yep.
and 911, a bomb went
911,
off,
something bad.
and
Yep.
hey, call me when you can. And I I can't remember getting any 911s because I developed people that could step up. And you know where that comes from? And I think it's a big advantage that you and I have in the military is we knew that at any time, any person from the lowliest private to the captain, the commander, lieutenant colonel could become incapacitated, could become ill, God forbid, pass away, and somebody's got to step up. So if you're not building that unbroken chain and that legacy of leadership through empowerment, through trust, what kind of organization do you really have?
That's interesting. So it brings two things to my mind. One, real world, and then I'll save that for another time when maybe you and I are meeting up somewhere for a conversation. But the other thing from that is, look, when you're in training in the military, how often do you do an exercise in which immediately they kill off or X the leader and put someone else in charge just to
Every
train
time,
that what you're saying,
every time, every time.
which is important. It makes me think when you're doing corporate scenarios and all that too. Also build that in. Someone's incapacitated or someone's offline now. So other people have to make decisions. I think that's awesome. Um,
You know, I do
and
that now.
you're absolutely right on that too. You have to be able to empower your team because at any time, for any reason, you could get hit by a train or the your cell tower went out.
Yeah, COVID, the internet went out, any number of things. I just came off virus version A of the flu that killed me. But the other thing is to transition to hiring. Like I've got a CFO now, I'm doing executives, and I need to hire a chief accounting officer or a controller. I look at those skills, but does this person now have the attributes to step in if that leader? I'm hiring number twos. I'm not hiring a role. And if you're a manager and you're putting a butt in a seat, instead of saying, is this a person who has the potential to step up and has the attributes that I can grow very rapidly? You're missing out, because there's that old saying that a lot of managers think two hands are better than none. That's not true, because you and I both know how one person, good people are your greatest asset, bad people are your biggest liability. So hire
Absolutely.
smart.
I love it. George, I'm appreciative of time, and I really appreciate the time that we've had here. I'm hoping that we can do a part two on this, because I have a bunch more questions. Before I get to my kind of final question though, like, The Talent War is a great book. I know people will want to get that, and people will want to follow you. Where's the best place for people to follow you and kind of maybe get in touch with you, whether they need some help, or they're looking for some training, or they just want to kind of follow the cult of George, if you will?
Well, number one, LinkedIn. That's always the best way. You can get the book on Amazon, but I love connecting with people. I love connecting with veterans. I love connecting with junior managers or people that want to get into management. I'm happy to give of my time freely. That's, you and I both know. Look, you and I have stood on the shoulders of so many great people. I need to be paying that forward in as many ways as possible, because I wouldn't be here talking to you if I didn't have so many people who had an inordinate amount of patience and tolerance for a young smart mouth NCO and lieutenant. And my success is directly related to their investment in me, and I want to give that back to people. So get it with me on LinkedIn or the book. Call me, whatever you want to do. I answer every email that comes my way.
Yeah, awesome. And something I took from that book was like, hire for character, train for skill, which was great. Let me ask you one last question. We ask everybody that comes here, and I think you'll probably have a unique answer to this. Like, what does the idea of connected intelligence mean to you, George?
To me, I think connected intelligence, how I tend to think of it, because now I have a wife upstairs who's neck deep in AI. It's it's all the data, it's all the AI, the machine learning, it's all the analysis, the analytics, as it interfaces and connects with the human condition. And what do you do with that? And what are the limitations of both? And how does one enhance the other? How does one counterbalance the other? Because in this age of technology, there's a lot of people fearful of artificial intelligence and machine learning and stuff like that. But we've been afraid of microwaves. We've been afraid of iPhones. We've been afraid of God knows how many new pieces of technology. Let's hire the best people and put them together to make the best world possible we can.
Embrace both the suck and the opportunity.
That's
I
it.
love it. I love it. My friend George, thank you so much for being on the Ontic Connected Intelligence podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it, brother, and hope we get to talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening in. To find more episodes, visit us at ontic.co/podcasts. Don't forget to rate and subscribe on your streaming platform of choice. Know someone who would be a great guest, or have questions you'd like us to answer? Email us at podcast@ontic.co. This episode was produced by the mighty AJ McKeon. This is Chuck Randolph. Until next time.